I call the Honourable Joe Goodhue.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Well, it's great to rise and speak on vote primary sector. In particular, I want to cover off on my responsibility for forestry and also for food safety within this sector that is so important to New Zealand. We wouldn't necessarily know it from some of the comments that are coming from the opposition, but it is. And let's start with our $4.5 billion forestry sector. This is a sector that is attracting capital from within New Zealand and overseas at the moment, because if we think about engineered timber, this is the way that this sector can grow to what they have set as a lofty target by 2022 of $12 billion. Now, they're going to be able to do that only if the much more valuable products are in fact put together, and engineered timber is the way for that. What the government is doing to support this sector is we are getting in place plans for the skills development, for the review of New Zealand's Standard 3603, which allows engineered timber to be used in a standard measure, in a standard fashion by the sector. And it is getting those barriers out of the way that will see that sector continue to grow and reach towards its potential. I want to touch on the Afforestation Grant Scheme, which was a budget 2015 announcement, $22.5 million over 6 years. Now, that will see an extra 15,000 hectares planted. But, you know, every week, Mr Chair, every week I hear about more businesses going out and planting more, because I believe the tide has turned and there is much more confidence in the sector. Let me address some of the ill-informed comments from the member from Labour who was on his feet before. You see, yes, there was an Institute of Forestry conference yesterday, followed by the Dana Forestry conference this evening. I've just left the dinner from the Dana conference. I've been hearing about the Institute of Forestry's conference yesterday. Back in 2013, the Institute of Forestry asked the government to put together a forestry sector policy. And I said to them, why doesn't the forestry sector put it together? Get the politics out of it, and that's what they've decided to do. Had I been able to attend yesterday, had I not already committed to other things yesterday, I would have done so. But in fact, I said 3 MPI people rather than, as Stuart Nash said, no one. So in fact, they're out of touch, the opposition are out of touch on forestry, and they're out of touch on food safety and many other aspects of the primary industry sector as well. You see, RSE was mentioned before. Well, the onions don't get packed and the apples don't get picked in my district, in Rangitata electorate, unless we have RSE workers. So that would be millions of dollars out of New Zealand's primary productive sector, because we have low unemployment in South Canterbury, we cannot get people to pick those particular products. So RSE is doing a particularly important job down there. The wine industry, well, apparently it needs help. It's going better than ever before at $1.42 billion in the last year, getting really excited about getting geographic indicators from this government. That will be very important for that sector. The wine industry is having one of its best years, as is kiwi fruit, great prices for beef. Actually, there's lots of things going well, but you wouldn't know it if you talked to the opposition. I want to briefly mention a trip that I had to Vietnam, because from this government's perspective, not only are we trying to get free trade agreements and understand the benefit that they would be to New Zealand, the Green members could well listen to this, but at the same time we know there are non-tariff barriers that we also need to be out there trying to reduce. And on the forestry and also food safety front, that was the reason for my last week visit into Vietnam. The week before, in fact, it was. That sort of non-tariff barriers into a market which has for the very first time seen $1 billion of two-way trade will put money into the pockets of New Zealanders. So New Zealand needs to reach out and work out what these non-tariff barriers are, work on them with the politicians, with the officials in the countries like Vietnam, Because far from just $443 million worth of export produce into Vietnam, we can do so much better. They trust us. They trust our food safety systems. They trust our honesty and integrity in exporting products to their nation. They want our technology transfer. They appreciate the fact that we have supported them in aid projects as well.
I'm going to call